base. So coffee's made up of two very different things, beans and water. And all you need to do, if you were to combine beans into water, it's not coffee. It's just beans sharing the same space with water, and it's not a very appetizing drink at all. And so the only way to make coffee is you have to grind up the beans, the water has to be boiled, and then you get wonderful coffee, and you're highly caffeinated and all that. So it's and you're happy. So both things have to change fundamentally in order for them to be one. And I don't think we signed up for that in marriage. We just didn't think about that. We didn't think that in order for us to become a me has to change.
You're listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust. This episode is part 1 of a 4-part series, Seasons of Money and Marriage. The first season, Newly Marrieds. On this panel, we'll have 2 married couples, Brian and Jen Goins, and Ed and Amy Uzinski. Hosted by Blue Trust Senior Financial Advisor, Marshall Potter. If you're single and wanting to be married, or engaged, or newly married, this episode is for you.
Today we're excited to have 2 experts in marriage who have a lot of background with marriage speaking and counseling and practical life experience, having processed it themselves. And so we're excited to introduce Ed and Amy Uzinski and also Brian and Jen Goins. Welcome.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
to have you.
Good to be here.
And I'd love for the couples just to get to know you a little bit better. So tell me a little bit about your work in marriage, how long you've been married, a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so we've been married for 24 years. Ooh. Yes, and awesome. we have 4 kids. Our oldest is 23. We've got a daughter that's going to be 21 next week, and then we have a 18-year-old and a 13-year-old. So
all the stages.
Yes, we have all the stages
years.
right now. Yes.
Yeah, and we work with a sports ministry called Athletes in Action. So we work with college and professional athletes. Doing ministry with them all over the country.
Yeah. And then we've been working with Family Life with their Weekend to Remember marriage ministry for around 20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian and Jen?
Well, we're Brian and Jen Goins,
Yes.
and we have 3 awesome kids. We have a 24, 21, and a 16-year-old. And then we have been married for 27 years. I didn't know we beat you guys.
Yeah.
We've been married
It's
longer
amazing.
than you guys.
Yeah, but they've been on the speaker team at Family Life for a little bit longer than
Right,
us.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So we also minister to couples through Family Life's Weekend to Remember and speak at marriage conferences around the country. And we've been doing that for about 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also work at my local church in Melbourne, Florida.
Okay.
And Brian works at Family Life full time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our vocation and where we work.
Love it.
Yes.
Sounds good. So obviously living and breathing this stuff, which is great. So if you can remember back, newly married, right? You're getting married and maybe you have the wedding, go on the honeymoon, you come home and you're having your first discussion about something and you find out, hey, we don't exactly agree on this. So talk about the process of finding unity, exploring unity. How did you process those things? Was it that were you processing some of those in advance, or was it just as you came into marriage and you were discovering that? What was kind of the process you found? And I say that just because I think of John Maxwell talks about like a lot of life is making the right decisions and then maintaining those. But we know that up to 40% of couples end up getting divorced because of money alone, and there's lots of other reasons. So I feel like the exploration is, what are those right decisions and how do we come to that unity together? So tell me about that process and what that kind of looked like at the beginning for you. Maybe Brian and Jen, you start us off.
Yeah, we can, for sure. I was just trying to think back to, for us, we thought we were so similar. We thought everything was going to be super easy because we had, similar backgrounds, similar college, similar faith walk. Both were older we both were the eldest, and we had younger siblings, and so we just thought this is both born the same year. It's like, this is gonna be super easy. And then I find out that she likes to celebrate. Her family celebrates Christmas on Christmas Eve, where they open up all their presents, and they had certain meals that they did that weren't exactly like mine. And Jen loves to go to a church where there's a little bit more emotion showed. So all of a sudden, like, you're talking about church and talking about Christmas, like 2 big traditions that are a big part of what you think family is going to look like. And so that was something I know that we all of a sudden right away going, what are we going to do this Christmas? And I don't know, for us, what do you think really has helped us move towards, I would say, solving some of those things?
Right. I think after having a lot of disagreements, a lot of frustration, broken expectations, we've come to this idea that as we come to those things and those big decisions that you're going to make that do affect your life, and as you celebrate holidays, as you deal with money, as you think about how you're going to raise kids, or all the things that you think about when you're a newlywed, we have learned we kind of say a couple C's, and that is that we've learned to communicate on those issues, and then we've learned to compromise on those issues, where we come together and we're like, let's talk about it. We have to sit down and make a time to really talk about it. And we really share our hearts, and we're good listeners. So we really listen and honor each other in those things. But then we say, well, where can we make some compromises? How can we come up with our way of doing it? And what's going to be a standard in our family on those things?
That's great.
One of the things I wish somebody had told us when we were newlywed. In fact, our daughter, who's just got engaged, and our son just got engaged, by the way, so they better listen to this podcast because it'll help them out.
Yes.
They both just got engaged, and our daughter and future son-in-law were talking about how they've got a code word now for when something's more important to the other person. So like if they were to go, this is really
good.
important to me, you say this word, and I'm not going to divulge their word. That's for them. But I've heard other people say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you value this thing? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you value opening Christmas presents on Christmas night or Christmas Eve, versus Christmas Day? And if you're both a 9, well, then you've got to,
compromise.
You got to compromise.
Gotta
But
figure
if
out the
one is an
compromise.
8 and one is a 2, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll sacrifice because it's really important for you.
Right. I love that.
Well, and before you even get to that, I was just thinking, I love that, to communicate, to compromise, but there's such a jolt that happens when you first realize what you didn't realize, which is that we really do see this differently. So Amy and I met in Chicago across several years of time. We were both in school, but I'm from Cleveland. She's from Minneapolis originally. And Clevelanders and Minneapolis people see the world very differently. They have different histories. They just have a different mentality. So I think when we first started to bump into those differences, it's that feeling of, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that she sees the world so differently. And how did I miss this? Because I've loved everything about her up to this point. And now, we're going to open up gifts the night before. Like, what? I can't live with that for the rest of my life.
That?
Yeah.
Who would do
I
that?
cannot live with that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And you start to stack those up with each other. And Jen mentioned expectations. And how do you prepare for expectations ahead of time? People can tell you can read books, you can get premarital counseling, which is super helpful. But until you feel that feeling of, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, I'm not sure if I like you right now.
Yeah.
Is a really, that's a jolting thing.
It's not what you're expecting.
No.
You said I do.
No.
Yeah.
So to be able then even to say, well, that's actually normal
Yeah.
to run into
Very
that. Now, let's learn to communicate. And in the midst of our communication, this is what compromise looks like.
Yeah.
Like, we signed up to become one, which means I'm going to have to let go of some of what has been my normal forever. And you're going to have to let go of some of your normal, and we're going to make a new normal together.
But I would even say, I think some of the tensions that we first started to encounter was just how we communicated with each other. So it wouldn't even necessarily be an argument, or maybe it was, but we started to realize, gosh, we communicate really differently. So I need time to think, to process, to maybe step away from a situation.
Why do you need time to think? I've already thought it all out. Why can't we just talk about it right now?
Yes.
What are you thinking about?
Yes.
Come on.
And the excitement and the energy and the volume grows, and I start to shrink back even more because I think you're getting too big right now. And all of a sudden, now we're in an argument because we're not communicating well. So I think even to back it up, we found ourselves very different in how we were just talking to each other, and we had to step back and figure out.
And I think one thing with communication, you're right. It's easy to throw out just communicate and compromise,
Yeah.
So there's you kind of have to back that up a little bit. And one thing that we've been kind of saying about communication lately that I really like, and I feel like it resonates with people and it resonates with me, is that communication is a skill that can be learned.
Yes.
So you're not just born a great communicator, and you can't look at other marriages and say, well, they know how to communicate. You can learn to communicate.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that we always need to be pressing into and learning more about. On the way here on the airplane, I was reading a book about communication, and I'm thinking to myself, I teach on communication and I'm learning something from this book. And I know, honestly, the hard part is that I was coming here to communicate. So it was something that I was preparing for. Usually when you're on an airplane, you're watching Netflix or you're reading your own book. And so it takes some encouragement of like, okay, guys, if we want to learn this, it's going to take a little work. And you're not just going to magically be good at something.
Yes. Right.
You're not going to magically, whatever skill that you have to work at it a little bit. And so learning, okay, if we're bad communicators, that means the good news is that you can learn it.
Yeah.
But the hard news is like, you're going to have to make some steps of learning how to communicate. And like, this is not a podcast on communication. Maybe we could talk about some general skills, and there's a million of them. There's so many nuances. Like I said, you can be a lifelong learner on communication, but start taking some steps of learning how to communicate, how to listen well, how to voice your opinion, things like that a weekend to remember is a good place to start. But there's, so many resources to do that.
Well,
but,
and Jen, what I'm hearing you say too, built into that, is you have to unlearn before you can relearn to do the right way. Sometimes we have to back up and unlearn bad habits, things maybe we didn't even realize were bad habits until we started to bump into someone for whom this doesn't work, right? And Brian, I hear you say this all the time. Sometimes it's just changing our posture, and so this all goes back to when you start to run into difficulties and realize things are different. When I realize things are different, I want Amy to get my way.
Yeah.
I want her to understand me.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the first unlearning things is, instead of coming with that attitude, it's to say, tell me more about that. Right. We talk about it all the time at conferences and even between us. Let me slow down. Tell me more about why you feel the way you feel. And then really let that play itself out. Ask questions, try to understand. And then I'll get my turn. Again, when we're both here in good faith, posture towards one another, and then you can find understanding with each other.
So I want to draw out a little bit further, because I think I love the idea of developing communication skills and the commitment, but I could also see myself being narcissistic in that I want to learn the communication skills so I can get more of what I want.
True.
So talk about your faith and the underpinnings of that, and maybe the experience you have with the Lord as you're walking through this. How's the Lord speaking to you about your attitude toward your spouse and your heart towards your spouse?
Well, yeah, Marshall, I think that's really the underlying principle of even how you're approaching communication. Because if you're just learning to how do I communicate so that she can come to my way, my way of thinking, then that totally misses what the Bible talks about, which is the point of marriage is that I actually learn to love somebody else like God loves me. And how does God love me? He is always seeking to put my interests first. And so, Philippians 2 talks about don't merely look out for your own interests, but have the mind of Christ. Look out for the interests of another, right? How do I humble myself to go, it's more important in communication for me to understand what Jen's trying to communicate to me than what I'm trying to make her hear from me. And I think that's the hard, for me as a newlywed, it's like, even as I was thinking about you guys talking about, like when you feel that moment where it's like, I don't know that I like you right now. I married you and I don't think I like you. And you can do one of two things with that emotion. You can keep fighting for trying to change the person, or you can start to call a time out and say, okay, what needs to change in me right now so that I can actually hear her better? And I know I didn't have that mentality the first 5 years into marriage at all. It was much more about, I just want you to appreciate what I like. And me. Because that's why I got married. And that really uncovers the deeper thing about marriage, is that we got married really because I wanted somebody to love me as I am, and I don't want to change it. And if you go into marriage going, how does God want to change me in this relationship? It's a much different posture.
Well, and we talk about this at the weekends all the time, where we can be in a conflict or even a discussion, and if I just win all of the time, one of us is losing.
Right.
And so there's this quote that says, you can win every battle and still lose the war. And it's like, am I seeing Ed as my teammate, as my best friend, and how do I want both of us to win versus just me winning? Because if just I win, in these moments and I just get what I want and what I think is best, I'm actually missing out on the relationship and the fruit of what can come if we both come to it together, both sacrificing and both winning in the end.
Yeah.
So,
well, and God brought us out of our singleness, which we could have stayed single and been fully fulfilled and fulfilled God's purposes, but for whatever reason, he brought us out of singleness to become one with each other, which means that we really have signed up to become something different together than we would have been if we had stayed apart.
yeah.
Right? Like that's what we're signing up for, which again, I don't know that we really think about what the pain of that's going to be ahead of time or what that's actually going to cost, that I'm going to have to be transformed and changed. But underneath that is really it's like our theology. We don't usually think this way, but our theology is getting confronted all the time. What do you really believe about God in this?
Yeah.
Do you believe that God brought you together?
Yeah.
Like he has an intention and a purpose for you two to meet each other and to say yes to each other. And if, again, that's just to deal with that honestly, if we say no to that in our heart of hearts, then we're going to have all kinds of conflict. Because these two very different people are trying to inhabit the same space with all of our selfishness, all of our expectations, like Jen said, all of our inability to communicate. And I'm just going to keep looking out for me. And you, Marshall, you said it. That's why I think it's a large reason why so many people just quit on it. Because I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
But if we give in to the fact that God is behind this and he's trying to do something new, I think it helps.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make it easier, but it helps, right?
Absolutely.
To say, okay, then let's keep after this together.
Yeah, I love that. So we've talked about, the heart clearly, the ongoing learning. Talk about being a student of your spouse as well, like studying them and getting to know them. What has that been like? Are there things you've explicitly done? I don't know, love languages, other types of things to get to know each other better, and tell me maybe something you realized about your spouse, like, oh, wow, that's cool, and you kind of leaned into that. And then
Trying to think of one off the top of my head.
It's something that's really cool about me.
Yes.
You really learn.
Yeah.
You thought, man, that's awesome.
When you care about something, you slow down and pay close attention to it.
yeah,
We moved out onto a property that has 3 acres, and we bought this Toro zero-turn mower years ago. Beautiful model. And when I first got it, I'd never had a mower like that before. And I started to study it. I wanted to understand all the different parts of it and everything that it did and how it worked and how it didn't work. And then, how it worked on our terrain and what I could go over, not go over, and there really is this whole process of just slowing down, pay attention, and learn how this thing really works in its space, And really, again, it sounds somewhat crass to try to make that leap, but it really is the same thing with a spouse.
Look at your wife like a mower.
Yes, look at your wife. That's the takeaway.
That's the
like
takeaway.
a high-end
Put that on a
zero-turn
t-shirt.
mower.
I'm high end.
You're a high-end
Yes.
zero-turn mower. But I don't know her. I think I do, but I
Yeah.
really don't know her.
Yeah.
Because we just started with each other, right? We just got married. We just started to live in the same space, and so there's a humility, I think, to that, to say I don't really know how this model operates, and I need to understand how she operates even in this space and living in this place that we live in and in this season of life that we're in, because it changes.
Yeah.
When you're both doing that for each other, very cool things happen.
It really does. It's like the whole idea of being a detective of your spouse. How do I, and someone once called love focus. Like like you said, when I love something, I focus on it. I see every asset, or I see every aspect of that thing. And I know for me, I wish I had asked more questions about Jen early. I think we make more assumptions versus really being curious. What would make this Saturday win for you? That was one of our big disagreements, was like Saturdays. We didn't realize why we were so mad at each other on Saturday mornings.
Yes.
And I thought I had a perfectly planned out thing for Saturday. I'd go out, I'd get to the garage, I'd see what needs to be fit in there. I'd go out in the yard a little bit. And then it was time for lunch and a nap and watching some college football. And suddenly Jen's like angrily vacuuming around me, and I'm going, what's going on? I had a great Saturday.
Yeah, and that's because at my home, my family of origin, on Saturday was another work day. Like Sunday was the rest day. My dad's a farmer, an old farmer. So 6 days a week you work and then you get to rest.
Yes.
And so on Sunday you get up and maybe you sleep in a tiny bit, but not much. And then you start working and you take care of your home and you take care of your yard, and it's pretty much another work day. And
It's
so
really
when
miserable.
it's miserable. Yes.
Awful way to live.
And so that expectation of, we just had different expectations coming into a Saturday. And so after, I don't know, a couple years, we realized on Saturday morning, we need to get up and we need to each say, what are our expectations for the day? What do we want to accomplish today? How do we want to rest if we want to rest today? And just kind of having those expectations really helped, and knowing what we both value.
Yeah. What would be a win for you? What, and like in the moment of conflict, instead of keep arguing for your thing, like back up, call a timeout and go, why is this frustrating you so much? Like just asking the why questions of what would make this a win for you? This date night what would make it a win for you? I think that's trying to unpack, like, what are the love languages of my spouse? Like, Gary Chapman talks about, and I just wish I had taken more time to learn those first few of marriage versus just expect what I want out of marriage.
Love it.
So Brian and I, we lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for 12 years, and his family's from North Carolina. And so big Tar Heel fans, college basketball, Tar Heel fans. And so our kids grew up in North Carolina, also with their grandparents being so big Tar Heel fans. And Brantley is engaged to this young man now, and about a month ago, she has on like a Villanova hat. And we're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And she also has like this giant sweatshirt. We are Cowboy fans. I won't explain that, but and we're not Panther fans, but Cowboy fans.
She's
And
lying to him.
I know.
She is
And
lying
so,
to
but
him.
here's the things. She put on his jersey. She is like, I want to be on your team. I want to be on your team now. Now, the secret to that is once you get married, that's great when you're like dating and you like the smell of the sweatshirt and you know, but then after you get married, the secret is like, we still want to be on the same team. We still want to try to find out what the other person likes and join them in that. We can end up really separating and end up after a while of separating, not just on teams, but on everything. And then when the kids are gone, and you're like, we don't even really know each other because we haven't built that. We're doing things together. We're on the same team, maybe not literally, but we've done things together. We've built it. And it's so easy after you get married for a while to kind of start going into your own corners and cheering for your own teams and doing for your own, girls' nights out all the time, or trips with other people, or, just not building up those date nights, or just being on the same page.
Yeah.
Jen.
So.
And I think you're getting somewhere. At least I feel this inside myself when I see those differences, because I've studied Amy, so I'm starting to get why she's different, where it's coming from. But I think the next step is to appreciate it, and for me to appreciate it means, so for example, did not know that Amy was not going to make any lists once we got married. That she just was, not going to keep track of things in the same way I was. I've got lists. Amy likes to say, I've got lists about my lists, where I'm saying I'm going to make this list as soon as I get to this part of it.
You really do have that.
Yeah, I do. I have problems. But that's how I just keep track of life. I just keep writing things down. I'm organizing them because I don't want to lose them. And Amy doesn't do that. So we've had conflict over that. Because I feel like she's not paying attention to the details of our life. And she feels like I'm smothering her with, details of our life, right? And so there's just this conflict of two different ways of doing it. What I've grown to appreciate, though, as we've communicated, as we've compromised about what that's going to look like, as I've stopped trying to change her, I realize that that's just part of a bigger package that is a fun person who is spontaneous and knows how to just make the day fun in ways we didn't plan on. Like, that has been part of her personality. It's one of the things that everybody loves about her. It's why people want to hang out with her and not me. But it's like, no, wait a minute. Like, I don't want to change that part of who she is. Like, that may be a downside for me because of how I'm wired, but it's part of this larger package that I need in my life. So that, you start seeing those things. Like, I need this. I never would have chosen it if I had known this ahead of time, but it's actually what I need to change and become something different, and it becomes a blessing. that's when I think, you're getting somewhere with each other.
I love the gratitude thing. And I think you're also saying you're trusting God's purposes in that.
It's a theological statement again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So love it. I'm hearing good communication, discovery. I love the Saturday morning idea. I totally relate to that.
Same.
Yeah.
We had some doozies on Saturday
same
morning.
thing.
And all you gotta do is
Yeah.
just ask a question like,
Yes.
what would be a win for you tomorrow?
I
Like,
don't
you do
know.
that on Friday night or Saturday morning. What would be a win for you?
I'm not sure I wanted to know the answer
No,
to that
I
though
know.
for
The
a long
win was
time.
you did everything
Yeah, right.
I wanted to
Leave
do.
me alone on
Right.
Saturday.
Just
That's
choose one.
Right.
good. That's
Choose
the
one and
compromise.
let go. You have to let go of the.
Yes.
You mentioned the coffee illustration that we have used before, and I don't know if this would be an appropriate time. Brian, why don't you give that illustration?
yeah.
I do love it.
Well, just real quickly, it's like we love coffee. So coffee's made up of two very different things, beans and water. And all you need to do, if you were to combine beans into water, it's not coffee. It's just beans sharing the same space with water, and it's not a very appetizing drink at all. And so the only way to make coffee is you have to grind up the beans, the water has to be boiled, and then you get wonderful coffee, and you're highly caffeinated and all that. So it's
And
all
you're happy.
and you're happy. So both things have to change fundamentally in order for them to be one. And I don't think we signed up for that in marriage. We just didn't think about that. We didn't think that in order for us to become a me has to change. I have to change.
That's good.
And
Never
so
said that before.
it's like, yeah, there you go. So let's and I think our culture, we're living in a culture where our kids are getting married in a day where I think the mentality is you get married so that somebody else makes you better.
Yeah.
So somebody else is adding to your agenda and you don't really have to change you. They just will hopefully come alongside you.
The soulmate idea means you're going to come and fulfill me. You're going to
Right.
complete something that was missing in me, which is very different than I'm going to agape you, which we talk about, right? You say the Bible talks about love.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what's best for you in spite of what it costs me.
I'm gonna die to my things inside of
That's
me.
really different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, how long do you think it needs to take before you get in touch with that? It's like nobody signs up for that. I think pretty comprehensively you can say that just because we don't know what that is. But I don't think it has to necessarily take years and years and years to get there. It's kind of up to us. Like we can avoid a lot of misery by making that adjustment quicker rather than later.
Yeah.
How am I going to stop trying to demand that I get what I want and you to become something for me, and me start to think about how can I become something for you, which sounds miserable on the surface, but when both people are doing that, it's really fun,
Right.
and enjoyable.
Well, it's the paradox of what Scripture says, right? Like if you give, if you give up your life, you'll gain your life. If you lose your life, you'll find it. If you give, it'll be given back to you. I mean, just over and over. And Paul even says this in 1 Corinthians 7, where he talks about marriage, and he has a very realistic view of marriage. He's like, when you get married, your heart actually gets divided because you're not just thinking about you anymore. You're also thinking about how to please the Lord. I'm also thinking about how to please my spouse. I'm also thinking about how to please my kids. And so if we would give that message to newlyweds of actually your heart's going to be divided when you get married multiple times, but actually that's when you actually experience a full heart, because it has to get divided in order for it to grow.
So interesting.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So with that spirit in mind, knowing what Christ has done for us, and we're doing that for our spouse, talk about some of the rhythms that you've laid down, or almost seeds that you regularly plow into the soil towards one another. What are good habits or rhythms you've developed that you feel like strengthen your relationship? And
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk about this a lot, and there's been seasons where we've done it really well, and then there's seasons, which when I say seasons could be 2 years, 3 years, but spending time together. And it's this intentional going out or after the kids go to bed and say, we're putting away all distractions. So the season that we're in kind of right now is we do a lot of shoulder to shoulder activities together. So speaking at a marriage conference, watching a kid's sporting event, we're here, we're together, but we don't get much face-to-face time where all those distractions are kind of put to the side. The kids are, we're not watching a kid's event and just saying, how are you really doing today? Tell me about what's going on at work. And just this intense eye to eye and not so much shoulder to shoulder, watching a movie together.
Yeah.
We've gotten more of that, but yeah.
Yeah, so when you're newly married or in the first years,
Yeah.
you are doing more of that.
Yep.
There maybe aren't, again, everybody's different. Everybody's getting married at different ages
Yeah.
with different responsibilities, but it's still is probably you're going to be doing more of this. And to catch yourself when you start to separate from each other, again, the sooner that you can catch, well, we're really not getting good face-to-face time anymore. Like, don't let that turn into a house fire before you know, as soon as it starts to smoke a little bit and one or the other feels like we really are not spending time with each other, we don't know each other well, we need to stop and turn towards each other. Be intentional about it.
I was just going to jump in real quick, which feels totally unromantic to a newlywed, where you spent the last few years spontaneously getting together.
Chasing each other.
Yeah, like showing up in the morning with a cup of coffee, and there you go. And
a giant
you didn't
sweater.
have to tell each other, I can't wait. When are we going to see each other again?
Yeah.
And then you get married, and it's like, we got life, we got bills to pay, we've got kids. If you're a blended family coming in together, it's like all of a sudden you're adding a whole nother layer of stress. And so to tell a young couple, establish right rhythms now that become non-negotiables.
Sounds crazy.
It's almost like when you guys give investment principles, if you would just start putting the $25 a month or $50 a month every month, you almost don't think about it anymore.
Right.
And so what are those things that you don't
That's
have to
good.
think about anymore, on a regular basis? Like for Jen and I don't know when we developed this, but just we like to say calendar your companionship, 1 in 7, 1 in 30, 1 in 365, once a week having that just check in. And maybe it is at a soccer, you're going to a soccer game or you're going out, but I'm going to check in and just see what are the burdens you're facing right now. Where could I help you? We ask questions of each other. 1 in 30, have a fun date night, we could never maintain the weekly date night. We heard that from marriage conferences. Some people that do that's great, but it was like, that just seems like another thing to do, and it costs money and all that kind of stuff.
We would have seasons. We would do
okay,
it really
seasons.
well
I was
for a year.
I was just thinking
And then
that.
there'd be a year where we're like, okay, and then we do it again well for a year.
As
But
far as actually going out to dinner or something in the night, drop the kids at Awana.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you
Find
got
a
that
way for the
Wednesday
church to
nights.
take care of your kids.
You got 90 minutes. Okay, what do you want to talk about?
And then 1 in 365, just getting away once a year to do a marriage conference or a vacation or something like that. We've tried to do that. We haven't done it perfectly like you guys. But I think that if you kind of get into where it doesn't feel like this is work anymore, then you'll reap the benefits, much like an investment.
Right. Yeah. And I think something you said, that going back to that shoulder to shoulder versus eye to eye, I'm presuming like the goal is when you're doing the 1 in 7, it is the true eye to eye.
Yes.
It's not a business meeting. You're really trying to just talk about you as a couple.
yes.
Well, Ed's got a list, and he
Yes.
goes through his list. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's get it out.
Yeah.
I think that's something that changed significantly is when you started to do what your friend Jason was doing when his wife would call. I think that was a good, healthy.
Yeah, I've been telling this
pattern.
story for years and this was in the first few years that I would go to lunch with this guy named Jason, and consistently, the only time he would answer his phone is if his wife called. Okay, so that would be the interruption, and she always seemed to call during lunch when we were out because that's she knew he was at lunch.
Yeah.
And Jason would listen, and he wouldn't hardly say a word to her. So there'd just be these kind of long pauses, as I'm sitting there across the table waiting. When is he going to be done? And at the end of the call, he would always say, "How can I help you, babe?" Like consistently.
Wow.
That was a pattern for him to say, "How can I help you, babe?" And at one point, I finally asked him, like, "Jason, why do you always end your call that way?" And he's like, "Because I don't know what she's going to say."
You don't
I was
know what
like,
she
well,
needs.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I realized that I never just stop and ask Amy, "How can I help you, babe?"
Wow.
I've tried to be present. I'm trying not to be a bad husband, but I've never actually just intentionally said, "How can I help you?" So
That's
even in these
gold.
spaces where, again, what are we doing in our time together? Just to cut to the chase to say, what do you need from me? How can I? Somebody told me this summer at a camp that he starts every day by saying, "How can I lighten your load today?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do that's going to lighten your load?" And maybe she says something that he's actually not able to do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like he's, it's a blank check, but I'm at least letting you write whatever you want on the board, and I will try to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just a different way of doing life together.
And it works conversely too. I can come to Ed. I think I just asked you the other day
did.
when you were struggling through an issue. I just kind of said, "How can I best support you during this time?" What can I do for you today?
Absolutely.
And my first answer was, I don't know.
It was, yeah.
But at least I know you're thinking, and now I will think about how can you be my partner in this?
Yeah, she's on your team.
Jen has done that, just seasons of life where you've said, how can I serve you today? And it is just
Radical.
you think that's not a really big deal, but it's like, I wake up every morning with an insecurity. Does anybody notice me? Will I matter today? Am I strong enough to make it through whatever I got on my plate? And for somebody to go, is there any way I can serve you today? Like just that, Laura, help you today?
You're like, what?
Oh, it's good to know that one person in the world is thinking about me.
We're a team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that kind of switching gears a little bit is that some of the habits, we were talking about habits.
Yeah.
And so we could probably sit up here and say, pray together, go to church together, tithe together, be generous together. And those are all great things. Yeah. And I would say definitely, if you can. But there's going to be couples out there who are going to say, I want to do that, but my spouse doesn't want to do that. And so I know for Brian and I, one of the things, Brian and I both, like we said, we both came from Christian families. We went to a Christian college. we wanted to be in ministry. And I just thought we would naturally pray together all the time. That was one of the habits that I wanted in our marriage. And for some reason, Brian never pursued that. It's not like we fought all the time or anything like that. We had our disagreements, but this is one of the things that we didn't do. And that was a longing of my heart. And I really didn't want to be the one to always be like, let's pray together. I really wanted him to kind of lead out on that. And so I just started praying and asking God, will you make us a couple that prays together? And honestly, year after year, it never really happened. We would pray before meals, or we would pray like maybe every once in a while if we got in the car and going on a trip or something like that. But I know both of us didn't really have that in our family. And so it wasn't modeled for us totally. But after about 20 years of praying for this, and I don't mean to throw him under the bus.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
We've talked about this.
It's a good one.
It's a big one, and it's not that I didn't know.
Nor is it that you're not praying in your own life.
Right.
It's just different to try to pray with.
There was an intimidation factor. And again, if this is a spiritual exercise, and not only do we have God who's for us, there is an enemy against us, and he's whispering the whole time, like, you're not good enough. Like, what are you going to pray? And, there was this performance factor that I was feeling. And that I wasn't depending upon the Spirit to actually move into that space. And when men aren't confident about anything, they don't move, typically. Yeah. And so, anyway, go on.
Anyway, so
20 years of praying.
He was a great husband. I honor him in that way.
I appreciate that.
But that was just one area where I'd be like, oh, I want to pray. And actually, Dennis and Barbara Rainey, who I think who you will have on the show or have had on this podcast. He would be saying his thing. We pray every night together. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, I want to do that, but we just don't, And so anyway, I had been praying for a long time that we'd be a praying couple. And for some reason, about 20 years into our marriage, I don't know, I guess the Lord just moved and answered my prayer finally. But we happened to need 2 new chairs. And we had this corner in our room. We were in a new home. And we bought these 2 new, comfortable chairs. And we found ourselves there every morning together, drinking our coffee and reading our Bibles or whatever. And we had teenagers in the house. And one day, Brian just said, "Do you want to pray today?" And I was like,
because we have teenagers in the house. That's really the link between those two statements.
We had some struggles with teenagers, and really, the struggles that we had with 2 of our teenagers kind of was a little bit of the impetus. But it was just and then the next day we found ourselves there again, and he would say, "Should we pray again today?" And I was like, "Yes." And now we have this habit, but it didn't happen for 20 years. And so if there's something that you see in your spouse, start praying about it and don't give up. That's very scriptural. Don't give up and pray about it. Yeah. Jesus asked us to do that. And I think for me, I really tried hard, and there was times my heart was disappointed, but don't keep nagging about it, and don't keep, just be quiet and pray about it. And it can go both ways. And now, though, again, we're not perfect, and now we're in a different season where we have some kids out of the house, and he has to leave the house a little bit earlier than I do. And so it's not quite as regular because we have a different schedule, but as much as we can, if we find ourselves in those 2 chairs, which we do quite often, we pray together, and we have a little system for doing that we love, and it's not anything crazy or anything, but It's just different people on different days, and we always pray for our 3 children, and we always pray for each other. And now that's a little habit that we have. But if you're a young couple hearing this and you're like, we're never going to get there, have patience. Keep praying. Keep asking God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, that aspect of it, of not nagging your spouse, which might be a temptation when you're younger, but learning to give it to the Lord. Yeah. And it sounds like you were honoring Brian still in that time, even though you shared what you wanted, but you weren't nagging about it.
Right.
Play the long game.
Play the long game, yeah.
You know, I have a question though.
Okay.
Even to throw out. So we've said we want to be in a place where a rhythm or a pattern is that we're going to talk to each other. We're going to ask each other, how can I help you? We're going to try to study each other. We're going to try to be patient when we're not getting what we want. Right. Pray. I like all that. But just by nature of actually getting together and talking is, if you're going to be honest with each other, it's going to produce some conflict. Right? Maybe some hurt feelings, or I feel threatened, or I feel defensive right away because I'm not doing something that you want me to do, or I'm failing you in some way, which can, escalate. And because that happens, right? Where you end up actually having an argument because you were honest with each other. So I'm curious, again, I don't want to put everybody on the spot. I mean, what do you say to that? What do we do when when we actually are honest with each other and it turns into an argument, or it turns into we can't get past this spot with each other? What would be your advice or thought on, okay, what's the next step? I think I just heard one from Jen, which would be, if we're talking to people who actually see God as their ultimate authority, you should talk to him and bring him into it, right? I heard that. What else would you suggest we do when we feel that,
That's a good question.
Yeah. I think I heard from you different personalities. So needing more space and then liking to engage. So I would say, and I've seen this, the idea of like, okay, I need space. So saying that, but also agreeing on a time when you would come back together. So having sort of a structure for re-engagement, but also strategy, safety. Yeah. What are your ground rules around that? Whatever the couple needs.
I think you guys are athletes. You've been on Athletes in Action. We've played sports. We were talking about your kids playing soccer and all that. There's a point in a game where when you realize the momentum's not going in your favor, like when the other team is beating you up, and you realize what you have a built-in mechanism to stop that momentum. It's called a timeout. And the timeout just allows you to huddle up again and just go, okay, we recognize that we're not in a good spot. And I think there's something about that I don't think I had the freedom when we were first 5 years of marriage, newlywed, of going, just that freedom of halt the momentum and just recognize we're funky right now. Yeah. This isn't good. This isn't what we want. It's almost like get outside of yourself for a second and just look in and go, I don't like you right now. And I don't like what we're doing right now. We're still in it. Let's just call it time out. What do you need right now in this moment? Do you need for me to hear more about your pain? Do you need space? And you just call that time out. I think is a huge help to go, let's analyze what's going on. What are we really mad about? Is now the right time and place to have this conversation? What do you need in order to go forward? Okay, and then you come up with a plan. But what we don't do often enough is just recognize that we're on a trajectory that's not good for our marriage.
Just
stop it.
And I would say for myself, if I'm calling myself a Christ follower, I have a spirit inside of me that can actually start to change how I respond in this moment. So I would say it took several years into our marriage, but if we were starting to come to a head and I started to get defensive, that's my MO, is I'm going to get defensive and I'm going to throw it all back on you. And this is how you're talking. This is how you're not doing it right. This is, and it's you, instead of, okay, Spirit, stop me right now and show me what do I need to change in this moment.
Love that.
Help me to get my eyes not focused on him anymore, because that's what I do is I make Ed the problem and say, Jesus, where do I need to open my eyes right now to what I'm doing? And help me to see it and control my tongue and control my thoughts right now and come in, Spirit, that I say I believe that the Holy Spirit can change me in those moments. So that has been something that's been huge for us. And when one of us is doing it, how the tide slowly starts to change. But if we're both doing it, it's like, oh my gosh, wait, hold on. why are we doing this? I am sorry that I said that. I should not have said that. And he's quick to apologize. And then we get back onto the trajectory of figuring out what do we need to do here in this moment.
It's good.
So
Tell them about your Take It Back, what you learned. When did you start doing Take It Back?
Pretty
Yeah.
early.
This is good.
Yeah, so this is one of our little strategies with each other, is that we would often realize that one or the other of us was saying something that was triggering the other person.
Yeah.
And so it's just the old playground tactic, right? So we would give each other permission to say, take it back. And what take it back means is, whether you realize it or not, right now you are stepping on a very vulnerable spot inside of me, and I'm getting angry. I am hurt. I am having a negative reaction to this. And so you can say, take it back. And then I have the option, as a free will human being, adult, grown man, I can either say I take it back, and then
and what's really cool is, in that moment where you say, I take it back, tell me about that.
Yeah,
Why,
I don't know what's going on
What
here.
is that triggering inside of you right now? Because I have no idea that I'm stepping on a landmine right now. So tell me more about that.
And so instead of it turning into a fight or going all the way right to the end of that road, you stop it. You're intentionally taking a time out.
Yeah.
And now we're actually having a conversation about, why is this sensitive to you? Which can turn into a really fruitful conversation instead of a fight. Or I can say, yeah, I'm not taking it back. I did mean it, actually.
And I know it's a landmine.
And we're going to ride this all the way to the end of the road.
all the way down.
Which never ends well.
No.
I don't know why we would ever chosen that, but sometimes we did. And it's like, no, let's actually respect that take it back moment. This actually can work for us, It literally has not only prevented a whole bunch of unnecessary arguments, but it's helped us to get closer.
Yeah.
Because we're studying each other. We're learning things that we don't know, or that are offending, or something I'm sensitive about right now. Or there's this whole story behind that word, or this implication that you don't even realize.
Yeah.
You got to have a strategy of some kind.
Yeah. And I love, Amy, your point about, we have a choice, right? We can choose to the spirit or choose to the flesh.
Yeah.
But if we stop and think of that as a primary question here, am I going to lean into what the Lord would want me to do?
Yeah.
It can take it in a completely different direction. As you said, we always have a choice, but we have the hope that Christ can help us respond supernaturally.
And you got to have, I'm going to throw this in real quick, Marshall, while we're here, because I was thinking this while Jen was talking. To make this spiritual move, it's a decision that we make. We get to decide whether we're going to walk with God or not. And some of the chaos that is in our homes right now, whether you've been married 3 years or 30 years, is just because one or both of us has never said yes to letting God be in control, right? So that's fundamental. But even if both of us have said yes to God, we're going to need a community of people around us that will help us to grow and help us to stay on the right path. We were never intended to do it all by ourselves, which is, I think that's another American
It's a great
thing.
habit. Well, and it's a great habit that what you're bringing up.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
Take
it's
it.
just because I think we're going back to that idea. What were the rhythms? What are the rhythms that I think Newlyweds could start is like right away, get into a small group or or have a group of people around you that you can do life with. And it starts with the church. So find a faith. Jen likes to say, where are the places that we are going where faith can grow us? Where can we intersect with that? At a church, at a family camp, at a mission trip with other couples or with other people. So I think that's huge, that when you let that linger, or you go, I don't need anybody else, like where are you in places where you can be vulnerable and accountable?
Yeah, in the same way you should think about your money in a wise way early. Don't wait on that, right?
Yeah.
Set up an investment portfolio, think about your future. You should think the same way about people.
Yeah.
And we need somebody that's a little bit older and further down the road from us that we can turn to give us wisdom, right? Because they've been there. We need some other people that are right where we're at so that they can empathize with us. We can journey together. We can cry together. We can laugh together. And ideally, if we really want to go all the way to the end, we need right away some other couples that we're pouring into.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to wait till we get 10 years into this thing to be a marriage that's on mission and is actually starting to think about how do we invest in other people in some kind of way.
Or singles, they don't even need to be married.
Right.
Just have-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a good portfolio of relationships to have.
Yeah.
That the sooner you start moving in that direction, and we know it's difficult. Like, we're isolated, disconnected as
Busy.
people, busy. It is an intentional, again, just like with your money, right? You have to be intentional to put these things in place because you believe doing so will create a different future for you.
Right.
That's what's at stake.
Agreed. Speaking of money, I love that. Speaking of money, I'd love to hear about that. As we said, 40% of couples usually are getting divorced because of some money-related root. We've talked a lot about the underlying and the relational aspects of it, but talk practically how you're coming together, separate checkbooks, separate histories. How did you navigate that, bringing money together and your stories and your expectations around money? I'm seeing Amy smile here. Is there something?
Amy,
Tell me.
what do you think?
What's your advice, Amy? What's your financial?
She's turning red.
We're surrounded with, you've read Russ's
There's-
book.
Books.
We are.
Yeah,
I
read
did read
Russ's
Russ's
books.
book. It's been fantastic. I grew up in a home. I did not learn really anything about money.
Okay.
And I got married young at 23, and Ed is a few years older than me. And he had it all set out. And he's got lists, and he's got ideas, and he had the insurance. He, had the apartment. Like, he kind of had it. And so I have
Been the fun one.
have been the fun one.
You're the
and have
fun one.
Morphed into it, and he really is happy to take the financial role and responsibilities in our family. It is something that I'm still growing in and still wanting to learn more. Again, I loved Russ's book. That was eye-opening and very helpful for me just to begin to understand how money works and where it can go. And so...
Well, this will sound terrible. We've never been hugely budget driven, even in saying that I'm a list person. But two principles that we both signed up for right away, and it's really worked for us, is one, we wanted to be givers.
Yeah.
We wanted to honor God saying, give the first fruits, give the tithe.
Yeah.
So we'd always taken that seriously together without hesitation. And we don't do debt.
No, we don't overspend.
We don't overspend. We don't spend more than we make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were both committed to that, which left us feeling very wealthy. And again, we don't even need to get into numbers, but we were not like numerically wealthy. But because I think we gave to God and we didn't do debt, it seemed like we always had money to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's our story. That's the way it worked for us.
You're hitting the big rocks, though. Honor the Lord, spend less than you earn.
Yeah.
Don't be a slave to the lender.
I wish we would keep track still to this day. We're 24 years in, and I still honestly don't like the way we keep track of our money. That's probably making Russ cringe somewhere in the building right now. We don't do a good job of keeping track of it beyond we're going to give right away, and we're going to work really hard not to spend more than we have. Now, you got to know how much you have and where it's all going, right? So that's gotten more complicated.
Yeah.
But that's driven us.
It has driven us. And there has been some tension. It's not that it's been tension free.
Because sometimes we've overspent.
Yeah, because sometimes we've overspent, or sometimes I want to spend here and he wants to spend there, or I want to spend and he really wants to just keep saving. And so it has come with some tensions.
Communication and compromise.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Like, if you're spontaneous, so how do you blend that into a budget? If you know you need to save, how do you blend that in? It's kind of a compromise of honoring both desires and knowing those are things that God put into your marriage.
Yeah. And so in our budget, when we do follow our budget, which isn't all the time, but there is a section in there for just kind of like my miscellaneous money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not something where
Fun money
that I can still have fun and go and do fun experiences. So that's part of the budget.
Yeah.
What
Sounds
do
like
you guys do?
It was a good start. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking for the newlyweds. I mean, if they're really newlyweds, that for sure the idea is that you're becoming one.
Yeah.
And so there really is no separate. Mm-hmm. We have committed to this, and I know that's so odd this day and age.
Yeah.
And I know there needs to be some protections and need to be wise about that. But for us, it's like we just we became one. Our checking accounts became one. Everything. Even though there are times that I haven't worked, it's not like he holds that over my head, or we're
This
both.
is my money.
Yeah, my
I made
money.
it.
We are both contributing to the family, and so that's something that we always encourage, is that you become one, physically and as a family, and that our money is our money. It's not my money.
And Jen, I know
good.
that's easier for a couple that's 23, 24,
Yes.
25,
Yes.
but would you say that's still true of a couple that's getting married at 32, 35, where they've
or
had...
blended. They already had a different way of operating,
Yeah.
maybe in their
I
previous
think,
marriage.
well, every situation is going to be different. So I think you need to get some wise counsel on that. But yeah, in general, I still do think that a principle applies across the board. And again, you might have different kids, you bring in other kids. So that is a great question. But, and I think it would be wise to get some counsel on that. But nonetheless, I still think if you're going to be one, that is going to also include that as well. Yeah. And it's just like, and there's also no secrets. So even
Right.
if let's say you are a blended family, or you have something that is from your grandparents or something like that it could stay there, but the other person knows about it, and there's no secrets. You're one in that area.
I think and especially as I think about those couples that are in unique situations, whether it's blended, whether it's getting married later, both are working, somebody is coming from a lot more money than the other person is having. How do I take complexity and move to simplicity? What's not good is when couples go the other way around, where they decide, let's move towards complexity where you don't have full transparency. And I can't see what's over there. And it's like, that's where the enemy, I think, can get in real quickly and start planting seeds of going, well, no, that's your money. You can do what you want to with it. You can go buy that car. We just had this conversation with a couple that they're a mess. And one of the reasons why they're a mess is because they're believing that, well, I'm not sure if this marriage is going to work. And so I need to start building a little nest egg over here. And then when they went to go buy a car, the husband was like, we don't have the money to buy a car, right? Well, no, I've been saving over here. I've got money for a car. Well, it's like, now I've got this seeds of distrust. So the very thing that you're trying to protect yourself from, creates distrust.
How about that?
Love the ideas here. Thinking forward, right? Maybe a couple of years down the road, kids. Tell me a little bit about that as you were in this stage. Maybe probably at the moment, most of us don't realize what we need to be thinking about when kids are coming down the road. But looking back now, what would you say couples should be thinking about? I think about possibly a family. There might be a stay-at-home decision, so income's decreasing. We talked about those things you don't necessarily know when life gets really busy, and there's these habits that are going to protect you in the next phase. What would you tell young couples during this just married phase that they need to be thinking about?
Well, if nobody else wants to jump in, I think you get real excited about the day the baby's coming, right?
Yeah.
And you don't prepare enough about when the baby's leaving, or what type of family you want to have while the baby's there. Yeah. And so I think that's when you use that time, maybe after those first 3 months where it's just a miserable morning sickness and all that kind of stuff. But when you get to that season where you can really start thinking about and having intentional conversation, what do you want family to look like? Do you want us both to be working? Do you want one of us to be home? What do you want the first 3 years to look like, or 5 years of the development of the child? How much time are we going to be spending? What are the ramifications of all those decisions? If you just kind of go into it going, we're adding a baby to our current life, that's going to be fraught with all kinds of difficulties and problems, because you're just adding complexity to an already busy life. You're changing the dynamic of your family. Yeah. And you probably need to think about how I need to change with it, or else you'll find yourself going, we don't have any time, we don't have enough money, we're not saving for college, I don't feel like I'm having the kind of influence I want to have on my child. And so it's like, how can I be intentional with some of those conversations earlier rather than after you've had the baby?
Love it. So what needs to be shed, what needs to be leaned into.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's good, Brian.
I saw this funny meme the other day. It said, for all you young parents with children in diapers, you think this is expensive. Wait till they're teenage boys in the Costco haul that you have to get just to feed them,
For the week. Yeah.
I think we think, okay, well, just wait till they get out of this season and then we'll have a little bit more money, or, wait till they're out of this, out of their the travel ball, and then I'll have some more money. Well, they just keep getting more and more expensive
Yeah.
the older that child
Right.
gets. So
And then they get engaged.
Yes.
And suddenly you got to plan for money and weddings.
Yes.
And, then you want to go visit the grandkids.
Yes.
So it's like it never ends.
Yeah.
yes,
It,
you have
it really,
to keep planning.
yeah, you
for
can't
them.
just keep trying to think you're going to adjust. It's like, how do I get ahead of that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, when you, Brian, I really like what you said. You probably haven't thought about what the values are, maybe a little bit, but that would be a new topic that maybe even seems intimidating. And I think it's okay to say, like, nobody really knows that. So that's a new conversation to be had, right?
Definitely.
One thing we can say, though, that you can know right now is, and you said this, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to give, that was a big struggle for me. I just wanted to keep living the way we lived when it was just you and me. And it's like, no, you can't do that anymore and be healthy with each other and in the home. So the longer I try to hold on to the way life was, I'm just going to be miserable. So what can I change now? Again, what do you need from me now that you didn't need from me last month?
Yeah.
Because he or she is in our house now,
Yeah.
living with us, right? And we're getting up in hours that we've never gotten up before in our lives, and we're feeling a fatigue we've never felt in our bodies before. What do you need now? Because it's gonna be different,
Yeah.
right? So I really like that. Were you thinking of something, Jen?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Really good, couples. Thank you for sharing wisdom. I'm sure young marrieds are going to benefit from this as a result. In closing, you mentioned this. You all have done a lot of work with marriage and speaking, encouraging couples through family life. So we hope families will take advantage of engaging in a weekend to remember or other family life resources. Jen, you mentioned this. If it's financial, possibly seeking a counselor, and Blue Trust would love to help you with that. We look forward to our next session, which will be talking about marriage with children. But in the meantime, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust. Thanks so much for listening, and please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Trust and investment management accounts and services offered by Blue Trust are not insured by the FDIC or any other federal government agency, are not deposits or other obligations of, nor guaranteed by any bank or bank affiliate, and are subject to investment risk, including possible loss of the principal amount invested. The information in these podcasts is provided for general educational purposes only. It is not intended as specific individual advice. The client's experience may not be representative of the experience of other clients, and they are also not indicative of future performance or success. Opinions expressed may not be those of Blue Trust.